Chapter A. Speech at the First All-Union Congress of Soviet Writers, 1934. Comrades, permit me to bring to the First Congress of Soviet Writers and through the Congress to all writers in the Soviet Union, at the head of whom stands the great proletarian writer Maxim Gorky, ardent Bolshevik greetings on behalf of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the USSR and of the Council of People's Commissars. Comrades, your Congress meets at a time when the fundamental difficulties facing us on the path of socialist construction have already been overcome, at a time when our country has finished laying the foundations of a socialist economy, all of which is linked with the victory of the policies of industrialization and the building up of state and collective farms. Your Congress meets at a time when the socialist way of life has incontrovertibly and finally triumphed, thanks to the leadership of the Communist Party, guided by Comrade Stalin, that genius and our leader and teacher. Moving consistently from stage to stage, from victory to victory, from the fires of the Civil War to the period of restoration and thence to the socialist reconstruction of the whole national economy, our party has brought the country to victory over the capitalist elements, which have been ousted from every sphere of the national economy. The USSR has become an advanced industrial country and a country with the greatest socialist agriculture in the world. The USSR has become a country of advanced socialist culture, a country in which our Soviet culture is developing and growing, etched in brilliant colors. The parasite classes have been done away with, unemployment and the pauperism of villages are non-existent, city slums have disappeared, because the socialist system has been victorious in our country. The entire face of the Soviet land has changed. People's consciousness has radically altered. Workers and collective farmers, the builders of socialism, have become the celebrities of our land. The strengthening of the internal and external position of the Soviet Union, the growth of its international importance and authority, its significance as a shock brigade for the world proletariat and a powerful bulwark of the coming world proletarian revolution, are all very closely linked with the victories of socialism in our country. At the 17th Party Congress, Comrade Stalin made an unsurpassed and brilliant analysis of our victories and the reasons for them, and of our position at the present time. He laid down a program of further work for completing the building of a classless socialist society. Comrade Stalin made an extensive analysis of backward sectors of our work and of difficulties, to overcome which our party carries on an unceasing daily struggle, leading the many millions of the working class and of the collective farm peasantry. It is imperative to put an end to the backwardness of such important branches of the national economy as rail and water transport, goods turnover and non-ferrous metallurgy. Livestock breeding, being one of the most important branches of our socialist agriculture, must be developed. Comrade Stalin thoroughly exposed the root causes of our difficulties and shortcomings. They derive from the fact that organizational and practical work are not keeping pace with the requirements of the party's political line and the demands arising from the carrying out of the second five-year plan. That was why the 17th Party Congress raised in all its amplitude the task of bringing our organizational work to the level of the mighty political tasks facing us. Under the leadership of Comrade Stalin, the party is organizing the masses for the struggle to destroy capitalist elements once and for all, to eradicate the vestiges of capitalism in our economy and in people's minds, and to complete the technical reconstruction of our national economy. The eradication of vestiges of capitalism in people's consciousness means struggle against every vestige of bourgeois influence over the proletariat, against laxity, frivolity or idling, against petty bourgeois license and individualism, against graft and dishonesty towards social property. We hold a trusty weapon to overcome all the difficulties in our path. This weapon is the great and invincible teaching of Marx, Engels, Lenin and Stalin, now being put into practice by our party. Their great banner is triumphant, and it is to that triumph that we owe the assembly of this first Congress of Soviet Writers. Had there been no such victory, there would have been no Congress. Only Bolsheviks could bring together such a Congress. The successes of Soviet literature are conditioned by the successes of socialist construction. The growth of Soviet literature reflects the successes and achievements of our socialist system. Our literature is the youngest of all the literatures of all countries and peoples. At the same time, it has the greatest idea content and it is the most advanced and revolutionary. There does not exist and never has existed any literature other than Soviet literature to organize the working people and the oppressed in a struggle to destroy utterly any and every kind of exploitation and to shake off the yoke of wage slavery. There is not and never has been a literature making its basic subject matter the life of the working class and the peasantry and their struggle for socialism. There does not exist in any country in the world a literature to defend and protect the equality of rights of the working people of all nations and the equality of rights of women. There is not, nor can there be in any bourgeois country, a literature to wage consistent war on all obscurantism, mysticism, hierarchic religious attitudes and threats of hellfire, as our literature does. Only Soviet literature could become and has in fact become such an advanced, thought-imbued literature. It is one flesh and blood with our socialist construction. Soviet writers have already written a good number of talented books, correctly and truthfully depicting the life of our Soviet land. We already have several names of whom we may be justly proud. The great body of Soviet authors is now fused with the Soviet power and the party, having the aid of party guidance and the care and daily assistance of the Central Committee and the unceasing support of Comrade Stalin. All the contradictions between our system, that of victorious socialism, and the dying, decaying capitalist system, can be distinguished with the greatest clarity in the light of the successes of our Soviet literature. What can the bourgeois writer write or think of? Where can he find passion, if the worker in the capitalist countries is not sure of his tomorrow, does not know whether he will have work, if the peasant does not know whether he will be working on his bit of land or thrown on the scrap heap by a capitalist crisis, if the working intellectual is out of work today and does not know whether he will have work tomorrow? What can the bourgeois author write about? What source of inspiration can there be for him, when the world, from one day to the next, may be plunged once more into the abyss of a new imperialist war? The present position of bourgeois literature is such that it is already incapable of producing great works. The decline and decay of bourgeois literature derive from the decline and decay of the capitalist system and are a feature or an aspect characteristic of the present condition of bourgeois culture and literature. The days when bourgeois literature, reflecting the victories of the bourgeois system over feudalism, was in the heyday of capitalism capable of creating great works, have gone, never to return. Today a degeneration in subject matter, in talents, in authors and in heroes, is in progress. Mortally afraid of the proletarian revolution, fascism is wreaking vengeance on civilization, dragging men back to the darkest and most barbaric periods of human history, throwing onto the bonfires and barbarically destroying the works of some of the finest men humanity has produced. A riot of mysticism, religious mania and pornography is characteristic of the decline and decay of bourgeois culture. The celebrities of the bourgeois literature which has sold its pen to capital are today thieves, detectives, prostitutes, pimps and gangsters. All this is characteristic of the section of literature that seeks to conceal the decay of the bourgeois system, seeks in vain to prove that nothing has happened, that everything is as it should be, in the state of Denmark, and that there is as yet no decay in the capitalist structure. The bourgeois writers who feel the state of affairs more acutely are steeped in pessimism, uncertainty as to the morrow, praising the dark night, and lauding pessimism as the theory and practice of art. And it is only a small section, the most honest and far-sighted of the writers, who are seeking to find a way out along other paths, in other directions, linking their fate with the proletariat and its revolutionary struggle. The proletariat of the capitalist countries is already forging its army of writers and artists, revolutionary writers, the representatives of whom we are glad to be able to welcome here today at the First Soviet Writers' Congress. The number of revolutionary writers in the capitalist countries is still small, but it is growing and will grow with every day's sharpening of the class struggle, with the growing strength of the world proletarian revolution. We are firmly convinced that the few dozen foreign comrades we have welcomed here constitute the kernel, the embryo, of a mighty army of proletarian writers to be created by the world proletarian revolution in foreign countries. Such is the position in the capitalist countries. The opposite is true of our country. Our Soviet writer draws the material for his work, his subject matter and characters, his literary language and words, from the life and experience of the people of Dnieperstroye and Magnitostroye, from the heroic epic of the Chelyuskin expedition, from the experience of our collective farms, from the creative work now in full swing in the four corners of our land. In our country, the main heroes of a literary work are the active builders of the new life, men and women workers and collective farmers, party and state workers, engineers, komsomols, pioneers. These are the main types and heroes of our Soviet literature. Our literature is imbued with enthusiasm and heroism. It is an optimistic literature, not, it should be said, in any purely physical sense of inner feeling. It is a fundamentally optimistic literature, since it is the literature of the rising proletarian class, today the only progressive and advanced class. Our Soviet literature is strong because it serves a new cause, the cause of socialist construction. Comrade Stalin has called our writers engineers of the human soul. What does this mean? What obligations does such an appellation put upon you? It means, in the first place, that you must know life to be able to depict it truthfully in artistic creations, to depict it neither scholastically nor lifelessly, nor simply as objective reality, but rather as reality in its revolutionary development. The truthfulness and historical exactitude of the artistic image must be linked with the task of ideological transformation, of the education of the working people in the spirit of socialism. This method in fiction and literary criticism is what we call the method of socialist realism. Our Soviet literature is not afraid of being called tendentious, for in the epoch of class struggle there is not and cannot be any classless, non-tendentious and apolitical literature. And it seems to me that any and every Soviet writer may say to any dull-witted bourgeois, to any Philistine or to any bourgeois writers who speak of the tendentiousness of our literature, yes, our Soviet literature is tendentious and we are proud of it, for our tendentiousness is to free the working people, and the whole of mankind, from the yoke of capitalist slavery. To be an engineer of the human soul is to stand foursquare on real life, and this in turn means a break with old-style romanticism, with the romanticism which depicted a non-existent life and non-existent heroes, drawing the reader away from the contradictions and shackles of life into an unrealizable and utopian world. Romanticism is not alien to our literature, a literature standing firmly on the materialist basis, but ours is a romanticism of a new type, revolutionary romanticism. We say that socialist realism is the fundamental method of Soviet fiction and literary criticism, and this implies that revolutionary romanticism will appear as an integral part of any literary creation, since the whole life of our party, of the working class and its struggle, is a fusion of the hardest, most matter-of-fact practical work, with the greatest heroism and the vastest perspectives. The strength of our party has always lain in the fact that it has united and unites efficiency and practicality with broad vision, with an incessant forward striving and the struggle to build a communist society. Soviet literature must be able to portray our heroes and to see our tomorrow. This will not be utopian since our tomorrow is being prepared by planned and conscious work today. One cannot be an engineer of the human soul without skill in writing, and it is necessary to note that the writer's technique has many specific characteristics. You have many weapons at your disposal. Soviet literature has every opportunity of using all these weapons, genres, styles, forms and methods of literary creation in all their variety and fullness, in seeking to make use of all the finest that has been created in this sphere by all previous epochs. From this standpoint, mastery of technique and critical assimilation of the literary heritage of every epoch are tasks that must be executed if you are to become engineers of the human soul. Comrades, the proletariat is the sole heir of the best in the treasure house of world literature, as in other spheres of material and spiritual culture. The bourgeoisie has squandered the literary heritage, and we must bring it together again carefully, study it, and then, having critically assimilated it, move forward. To be an engineer of the human soul means fighting actively for craftsmanship in words, quality in work. Our literature is not yet meeting the demands of our epoch. The weaknesses in our literature reflect the fact that consciousness is lagging behind economic life, a state of affairs from which, obviously, our writers are not exempt. That is why unceasing work on educating themselves and improving their ideological weapons in the spirit of socialism are the indispensable conditions without which Soviet writers cannot change the consciousness of their readers and thus be engineers of the human soul. We need great skill in our creative works, and in this respect the help of Alexei Maximovich Gorky is invaluable. Invaluable the help he gives the party and the proletariat in the struggle for quality in literature, for craftsmanship in language. Soviet writers have therefore all the necessary conditions for creating works worthy of our epoch, works from which contemporaries may learn, and works for future generations to take pride in. All the conditions for Soviet literature to produce works worthy of the adult and mature masses have now been created. After all, it is only our literature which is able to be so closely linked with its readers and with the whole life of the working people as is the case in the USSR. This present Congress is particularly revealing. The Congress was not prepared by writers alone. The whole country prepared it with them. In this preparatory work there were plainly apparent the true sympathy with which Soviet writers are surrounded by the party, the workers and collective farm peasantry, and also the demands the working class and the collective farmers make of Soviet writers. In our country alone our literature and the writer raised to such heights. Organize the work of your Congress, and the future work of the Union of Soviet Writers, so that the work of the writers accords with the socialist victories achieved. Create works of great craftsmanship, of profound ideological and artistic content. Be the most active organizers of the remolding of people's consciousness in the spirit of socialism. Stand in the front ranks of the fighters for a classless socialist society.